Hey everyone, this is Scott from Forgot to Grow Up. Welcome to another edition of ReWatching Legion. Today I'm talking about Season 1, Chapter 4. In this episode, David's still stuck in his mind, and his friends go trying to look for answers into his past. I just finished rewatching this episode. I'm just going to be sharing my general thoughts in this video. David's still stuck in his mind. We start off this episode getting a monologue from Oliver, who is Melanie's husband, who's been stuck in an astral plane for quite some time, and I really enjoy this. I remember the first time watching it being a little confused, but still liking it. I love the guy who plays that, Clemens. I can't remember his name now. Oh wow. He's from Flight of the Conchords and other such things, but I really enjoy him as an actor, and he's always brings such a goofy role, aspect to a role, and so I like his character being this kind of lost in time, lost in a astral plane guy who's not completely there because he hasn't really talked to anybody in however many years. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline of when Legion takes place is exactly. I still really enjoy the way that kind of starts off, him talking about, the two types of stories you're told, kind of giving you this little idea into, what's kind of influenced David throughout his life. I really enjoyed that. We also see in this episode that David can access the astral plane or create his own astral plane or create his own stuff inside the astral plane. That's a little... This psychic stuff is really hard to keep track of everything. But that's another one of his abilities they introduce, and that one plays a pretty big role over the course of the next couple seasons with him, in particular him and Sid's relationship and stuff like that, but even more so than that. So that was introduced. It was nice. I like the way they introduced this, the fact that he doesn't even know what he's doing and how he's gotten there, and then he gets a little bit of an explainer from Oliver when he meets Oliver, which is just a fun scene because Oliver is giving him some answers, but David's not really, because of Oliver's kind of demeanor and the way he's coming off. David doesn't know exactly what to think of this, and David still doesn't even know where he is exactly. So I kind of get why and I have the benefit of hindsight, having already watched the series, and knowing these things that Oliver is saying is how it directly applies to David. The fact that he has a parasite, which is the Shadow King. David even mentions that he had a dog named King, which I'm like, oh, I didn't notice that the first time I watched this, that the Shadow King, the dog is the Shadow King. He named the king. Makes sense. It's all a connection. That was interesting. The fact that David, I like that in this episode, we as an audience learn, / everybody else, or Amy tells David's doctor that David never had a dog growing up. So it was like, oh, David imagined it, and so this is where we start to be like, what else did he imagine? And so I love that the way this unravels throughout the season, very slowly, just kind of just building up this mystery, which just has a great payoff throughout the season. So I'm excited to keep going through this. I really also liked in this episode we get the Carrie and Carrie's origin story, how that they're one person who kind of share a body, and we get a lot of that. We get the cool fighting scene with the one Carrie, and how we see how that kind of affects her, the other half. That's just such an interesting characters. And it's just really hard to just explain them because they're one person but two. I really enjoyed getting their backstory and then seeing her fighting, because that's what she does best. So that was interesting. It did seem weird that she wasn't able to I get there was a bunch of them, but she just seemed to kind of stop and just start taking some hits. But who am I to judge a fight? Another thing we got in this episode, which is something I mentioned in one of the other videos, which is the realization that it's a Benny and not a Lenny that was the bad influence in David's life at the time, when we flash back to with those scenes when he's doing the vapor stuff with who we thought was Lenny, but apparently that's a dude named Benny, some fat guy. And so this is where we start to be like, well, who's Lenny? And in this episode it makes really kind of infers almost that it's kind of has something to do with his parasite connection, or the Shadow King. It makes it seem like Lenny or the Shadow Kings pretend to be Lenny, and that's the part I'm still trying to work out because I can't remember exactly how it plays out. I know eventually Lenny ends up in Amy's body, spoiler alert, but I can't remember exactly how we get from here to there and exactly how Lenny's whole role played out. So that's the big thing I'm curious about getting to, like rediscovering through rewatching. But yeah, that's all my thoughts on this episode of Legion. Let me know in the comments below what you liked about this episode. Thanks again for joining me today. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and have a good one.